Hi, I'm Terry Kimball, President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber, and I am so excited to bring you another one of our Strategy for Success series, brought to you in part by the City of Chandler's Industrial Development Corporation. But I am so excited about this topic today. Selling is an essential part of every business. However, not all sales training is created the same. And I have with me expert Bart Nollenberger. Bart, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Terry. This is fun. Love it.
It is. Well, I will tell you, I've known you for a little while now, but I was really, when I read your bio and got to take a look at it, I have to share this with everybody because I was very impressed and I can't wait to hear what you have to say today. You
Thank
have been
you.
selling and teaching sales, communication, and leadership for over 40 years. You don't look that old. But you started your sales career at 17. And don't tell everybody, but you were working at your dad's car dealership where you worked your way up to the top level in the industry as a general manager and then as the owner of an independent dealership, which is pretty amazing. That's hard work.
Yes.
Then it happened where you actually went to an Anthony Robbins event and instantly knew you wanted to be a speaker and trainer. You proceeded to train folks all over the country in North America in techniques to excel in the marketplace. Bart has taught sales to companies such as Toyota, Ford Motor Company, Cadillac, and the largest dealership group in the country, AutoNation. And in 2011, he opened his own consulting business focusing on closing and objections and how to utilize the phone and internet to maximize effectiveness. In 2013, Bart became a member of the John Maxwell team as a speaker, trainer, and coach. Bart quickly internalized John's teachings and became an executive director of the John Maxwell team. He later became a certified life and executive coach with the Maxwell principles, and within the last 2 years, a certified DISC, DISC, behavioral assessment specialist, that's really intriguing to me. Today, as an independent member of the team, Bart is a speaker, trainer, coach who helps individuals and companies of all sizes assess and improve their sales, leadership, and communication skills. The result is what we all want, to improve ourselves and ultimately our own bottom line. So Bart is married to his wife, Mary, who's a local commercial real estate broker. And between the two of them, they have 10 children and 8.5 grandkids. I love that. And they live here right in Gilbert. So Bart, thank you so much for joining us.
Terry, thank you, man. You know, there's a book I read that I've got to tell you a little story because I am as a believer, which I get not everybody is that's watching this, but I am. I've got a friend of mine who goes to a church that you are well aware of, Cornerstone here in Chandler, and he's a pastor, and his name is Rick Linneman. And starting on Thursday, I hang out with Rick and a bunch of brothers, and we're gonna do a boot camp called Unleash with him, where we really look at what we want, how do we want to follow our calling. And one of the books that he's going to take me back to read, which will be here tomorrow, I'm going to read it fast, is a book called Halftime by Bob Buford. And that book talks about the first half of our life is drive and success, and then the second half is significance. And that's what this does for me. This adds significance, and this brings so much value to me because I get to bring value to other people. And I'll tell you about it in a little bit, but as a member of the John Maxwell team, we like to say we're people of value that add value to people of value who get to add value to others. And you know what? That's making a difference in this world, and it's bringing love instead of division. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about sales in, oh my gosh, 45 minutes, I guess. I will tell you that you're going to get something out of this, no doubt about it. Matter of fact, you're going to get some techniques. I'm going to encourage you to take some notes. And you're going to get some things out of this that will be game-changing immediately if you put it to use. You also maybe hear some stuff that you say, I know that. But you know what? Knowing is a very dangerous place because knowing without doing really doesn't exist. So we're going to talk about knowing, but we're going to ask you to ask the question, how do I do it if I believe that it'll get me to the next level? So my phone number's on there too. I will tell you, and I didn't ask Terry this, so I'm setting the stage. I will tell you that this is part of the John Maxwell boot camp that you're going to hear today. Some of it's stuff that I've learned over the years. Look, I was in the car business. I'm not going to teach you how to be a used car salesman, I promise. But I am going to teach you how to influence people and change people and serve people and hopefully have them say yes at the end. So
There you
Terry,
go, Bart. That's exciting.
it is so exciting that I wanted to talk over you, but you and I have an experience at the same church. And I will tell you that one of the things that I've done is really try to really look at myself and grow through my experiences. I will also tell you that this is a season of life that's different than maybe 20 years ago. And what I mean by that is I've got a buddy of mine who's a pastor at Cornerstone, and he's doing a class at the matter of fact, this Friday and Saturday with a group of us. And he's having us read like 4 or 5 books. And one of the books that he's having us read right now is the book Halftime by Bob Buford. And in that book, he talks about how do we get from success, which is the early part of our life, to significance, which is the other part of our life. And that's kind of where I am right now. I want to add significance to others. And that's why this is so fun for me, because I think this content that you're going to see here can be life-changing. There's a couple things that I know you're going to get out of this. Tactics that work today, no doubt about it. But you're also going to be allowed to look at, get a sneak peek into the John Maxwell Method Boot Camp. We have a 12-week boot camp that's really powerful for small businesses, mid-sized businesses, even big businesses that don't have sales training in place. And it's extremely powerful, but it comes from a different twist. It's not just sales training, it's communication, leadership, personal development, and sales training. And if you're interested at the end of this meeting, go ahead and email me. You see it on the screen at bart@bartnollenberger.com. I will reach out tomorrow and I'll give you some information. Also, because of the fact that you're going to watch this whole webinar, at the end of the webinar, I've got a free gift for you. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Now, I'm going to be transparent here because it's kind of who I am. But I have 35 years of sobriety from drugs and alcohol. And I know that's kind of a weird way to start a sales meeting, but I've got to tell you, the reason I tell you that is I want you to know who I am. I love what Craig Groeschel, a pastor in Oklahoma City, says, is that they don't want us to be right. They want us to be real. And so I'm going to be real in the time we get to spend together today. And I'm going to be really transparent and what I call an arena to you, so you see the real me. Yes, this is not used car sales training. I've come a long way from there, but this is transforming people from maybe a lack of certainty to a high level of certainty so they buy from you. What I'd like you to do, if you can, grab a paper, pad of paper, notes, put this in your phone. But this was one of the areas that really allowed me to grow, to change, to be a different person 35 years ago than I am today. And this is what's called the laws of transformation. And you see at the top, it says, do you want to change? Well, everybody wants to change something, correct? And yet we don't know always how to change. Now you might ask yourself, well, what does that have to do with selling? Well, if you're a high performance seller, do you want to get better? Do you want to change? Do you want to go to the next level? Maybe you're brand new in sales and you're thinking, how does this even look? I'm not a salesperson. And so, yes, you need to have some change in your life, right? And yet in my world, I like to change. I like to look at change in every area of our life. I believe as a coach that I'm helping people change in any area of their life that they want to. And every meeting that I do, whether it's live, whether it's on Zoom, I start with these laws of transformation. The number one law of transformation, frankly, is self-awareness. And that is, who am I and where am I? Now, we can do that through therapists. We can do it through a lot of time on the planet. We can do it by asking ourselves questions about where am I? We're talking sales here. Where am I as a salesperson? Who am I as a salesperson? But there is a tool that Terry brought up that to me was a game changer in me as a person. When I was 25 years old and I was selling, I took what was called a DISC behavior assessment. If you've been around a while, you've heard of these. We've heard of Enneagrams, we've heard of spiritual tests, we've heard of emotional intelligence tests. We've all heard those. DISC has probably been around longer than most. And that particular DISC test really was given to a young man at that time. Again, I was around 25, that didn't know himself very well. And when I read it and I studied it, I realized, oh my gosh, that's exactly who I am. And it gave me freedom to feel okay with who I was. And in that freedom, in that sense of peace about knowing who I was, it also gave me a sense of peace of how to sell. I realized I was enthusiastic, I was fun, I was energetic, and I realized those were all good qualities. They didn't have to be revered, they could be really embraced. And so it allowed me to know myself at a whole different level. So fast forward to about 3 years ago, when I was offered to be a DISC behavior assessment consultant with the John Maxwell team. And I took the DISC again. And it was such a wake-up call for me again to really study my behavior. Now, this is kind of heavy, but I'm going to share it with you as we go along. And it's called the Johari window. Now, I'm going to share this with you now because I think it's that important. But if you will, we'll talk about DISC a little bit deeper as we go along here. But I want you, if you can, to grab a blank piece of paper. And I want you to put a line from top to bottom and a line from left to right. So you have 4 boxes. This is what the DISC behavior assessment will do with you and for you and to you. On the left side at the top, I want you to write the word arena. The arena is the wide open part of you. That's the part of you that is transparent and real, kind of like I told you about my road to recovery. And I did that for a purpose of allowing you to know who I was from my heart. But that is the part of you that other people see that they really love, right? The next line, the next box over, I'd like you to write 2 words, blind spots. Blind spots are, of course, you all know what those are, but those are the things that you don't know, but other people might see in you. So where the arena is the things that you know and other people know about you, blind spots are things that you don't know about you, but other people see it. And obviously, we'd like to know more of our blind spots in some cases and don't want to know about them in others. As we go farther down, go to the left side, write the word mask. And the mask is that piece of you that you know about yourself, but you're not letting anybody in. What you learned in psychology class in high school, those doors that you're not letting anybody in up in the attic, right? And then the last one to the right, I want you to write the word potential. Potential means you don't know yet, and neither does anybody else. Everybody in this room wants to reach their potential. In this case, we're talking about sales. How do we do it? We increase our arena. We get really aware of ourselves. We decrease our blind spots. We know what the blind spots are, and we work to fix those. And we get rid of that mask. We pull it off, and we set it to the side. If we can increase our arena, decrease our blind spots, decrease our mask, guess what happens to our potential? Boop, it goes up. And that's a game changer. So that's self-awareness. We'll get deeper into DISC in a minute. The next thing is massive self-integrity. And I mean asking great questions. I used to ask the question, why am I so stupid? That's not self-integrity. Now I ask myself 3 questions at the end of the day. In sales, I've asked them throughout my career. Number 1, what did I do right? Number 2, what did I learn? Because learners are earners and leaders are readers. And number 3, what must I change? When I ask myself that all the time, it gives me new information. Not what I do wrong, what did I do right? That's self-integrity. So the next one is vision. And we know what vision is. We know what goals are, but a vision meaning emotionally seeing the future and embracing it. I've gone to the woods for 30 days actually to write a vision statement. I just got back from Hawaii and got clear with a vision statement. And it allows me to walk in with emotion in what I want and look at it every day, being who I want to be. And last one is purpose. When I wrote the vision statement, I also had asked myself why. And I'm a person of faith, so I bring God into all of that. But knowing my calling and my purpose, that's where transformation happens. So that's what we get to talk about a little bit today. Sales is really simple. It all exists right in the body of which you exist right now. And one part of sales that goes hand in hand with your body is your head. And your head is your thinking. I have a couple great coaches with the John Maxwell team. One of those is Christian Simpson. He's probably the #1 life coach in the whole world. And another one is Paul Martinelli, who was the former president of John Maxwell team. They're mentors of mine, and they talk a lot about we are what we think. I do a class on the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Matthew Maltz, and I do it with salespeople at a deep level when I do life coaching and executive coaching. And in that book, we start really paying attention to our thinking, the thoughts that go across our ticker tape, across our mind. And we pay attention to those thoughts in that we decide what thoughts we're going to keep and what we're going to get rid of. Because what we know is that your results start with your thinking. We are what we think. Matthew Maltz, in his book written in 1964, said, you cannot exceed your own level of self-belief. So what you and I have to do is be very conscious of that thinking. That thinking, the conscious thinking, goes to our subconscious. Our subconscious then drives our behavior. If you don't like how your results are, it needs to start with your conscious thinking. Our subconscious does not know anything other than what we tell it. If I say, I'm a superstar, I'm marvelous, I'm loved, that goes from my conscious thinking to our subconscious, which acts on that which it's given. It only can act on what it's fed. The next part's the heart. Who are you? The greatest salesmen in the world right now, no matter where they are servant salespeople. They're about giving. They're not about the result. They're about the journey along the way. If I can find out what my client wants, then I will get what I want. I love what Zig Ziglar said. You can get anything you want if you help enough people get what they want. And I think that's very biblical in many ways as well. So who are you really comes to the fact of, in terms of sales, is are you a servant or are you tactical? I'm doing some work with a local Chick-fil-A in leadership, and I love the way they operate their business because it's relational. But I have to tell you, it takes a lot of work to be that relational. To become a Chick-fil-A owner takes 2.5, 3 years of school on top of having a degree. I know my friend said he had 17 interviews before they'd even consider him. It takes a lot of work to develop behavior that's relational within a business. The next one is hands. And what that means is the tactics of our business. And for you and me, that means the greet, whatever that means, whether you're in real estate, insurance, selling cars, doesn't matter, does it? Whether you're in financial, we have a greeting, asking questions, obviously listening, finding the solution based on our listening, presenting them with options, really demonstrating that option, asking for their business, and then getting the agreement. Now, it doesn't say close, it says get the agreement because it's a win-win. And then the last part that keeps sales simple is the feet. What gets you out of bed at 5 in the morning? And I think it goes back to that vision statement in your why. If your why is strong enough, you will do what others won't do, won't you? Now, Maxwell talks about selling as leadership and influence. We'll talk about that while we're together today. Selling is selling ourselves and adding value. And we'll talk about that and how we do that as we go along. Selling is, you've got to know you. We've talked a little bit about DISC and your personal selling style. We talked a little bit about that. Selling is, you've got to know who you're dealing with and recognizing customer buyer styles. Selling is, you've got to know how. You've got to know those tactics. And that's how you increase sales with customers. And you've got to ask, which takes courage. You've got to know how, when, and why to ask for the sale. So let's talk a little bit about that as we go along. Maxwell says, leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. Now let that soak in a minute. If I'm going to lead someone, I need to influence them. Now, there's a lot of people that are in leadership positions that influence others even negatively. It doesn't always mean it's positive. And leaders aren't always a person with leadership on their guard, but it is influence. Now, think about sales. It's influence, isn't it? Nothing more, nothing less. But how do we influence? Let's talk about that. Here's how we influence. Here's how we add value. There are three keys to adding value. No, there's not. There's four, actually. They need to know that you will help them. Now, Jordan Belfort, whether you like him or not, you might know him from The Wolf of Wall Street, has been, I wouldn't say influential, but I've actually gotten some great tips from him. And what Jordan says is that they have to know how much you're going to help them within 4 seconds. That rapport that you're going to build, you have to build it immediately. And we're going to talk about how to do that in a moment. But they also know, they need to know that you care, so that you want to help them and that you care. And then that last one, which we've all heard in the past, if you've been in sales before, they have to know you, like you, and trust you. They have to know they can trust you. And I don't know if they care if they know you, but they need to know that you want to help them and care for them. And they might not even like you, but they have to love the product. Because think about it. There's 3 10s that have to exist in really making the deal work, whatever the deal is. The first 10 is the product. If you sell financial services, they have to love the financial service offering that you're making them. The second 10 has to be you. And the third 10 is the company you represent. But I want you to hear this a minute. Don't send me any hate mail, but listen to me on this. They might love the product. Think about your own self. You've loved something. But the salesperson, although nice person, knew what they were talking about, sharp, they were maybe a 7 or 8. The company for which you were buying the product, you liked them, they were maybe a 7 or an 8. But you still bought. Why did you buy? Because the product was a 10. If the product is not a 10 in the heart of the client, they're not going to buy. And I know, because I do a lot of training on follow-up in industry. In other words, when we've had a client and we're following up, we didn't close them the first time, we're going back later. And it's so interesting because so many salespeople want and believe that the reason is always money. It's not. 80% of people that buy anything buy something different than what they initially looked for. So what's the point? The point is, if they're not buying, yeah, it might be you. It might be the company. But the reality is, it's probably the product that you're offering, and they didn't own it. Now, I want you to think about something here a minute. I'm going to have you write on your paper again, and I want you to write the word certainty on the left and certainty on the right. And I want you to put a line from one to the other. Right below that, I want you to write the word certainty on the left and certainty on the right. See, sales is a transference of emotions. If you can transfer your emotion, your belief to the client, in many cases, it moves their needle. Let me show you how. If you're at 0 in terms of certainty with your client, there is no way you're ever going to convince anybody to buy anything, no matter what it does for them. If you're a 10 in certainty, in other words, you've studied sales, you've gone to boot camps, you've watched videos on a daily basis of how to get better in sales, as I do every day, even though I've done it for 40 years. You're a 10, a 10, 9, 10 in terms of certainty. Your client comes in and they're just not emotionally or logically certain yet. But because you're certain and you know, and you're sharp as a tack, and you're enthusiastic. Now, I don't mean over the top enthusiasm. I mean just under the top enthusiasm, where you're real, but you're joyful and you want to help them. And you're an expert and authority. If you're sharp as a tack and they just know that this person is on their game and that they really love what they do and they love helping me and they love caring about me and they can be trusted, and they know their stuff, boop, now we've got a better shot of moving that level of certainty from 3 to 4 to 10. And they need to know that you understand their pain. Years ago, there was a sales training program that said that our job is to make the well sick and the sick critical. I get what they're saying. Let me explain. When they come in, if they don't have pain about something, you're probably not going to sell them. Now, our job is not to manufacture pain, not at all. But our job is to find out what their pain is and be the solution for that pain. Show them the solution for that pain. Guide them to help them go from 3 certainty to 10 certainty. Take that opportunity, that challenge, listen, and solve the problem. That's what you and I do. Like John says, everything rises and falls on leadership, and everything in sales rises and falls on leadership. Now, why? Because they're looking at you to lead them along the way, to guide them along the way as a servant leader, by the questions you ask, by listening, by modeling, by paying attention, which we'll talk about as we walk forward here. Now, Tony Robbins says it best. I love this quote. The quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions. Now, let's look at some of the questions that might be important for you to answer on the journey to be great in sales. Now, remember what sales is. You're serving a need. It's not manipulation. You're helping them get rid of a problem and find a solution. You are needed in industry. The reason that some people circumvent salespeople is because they've had a bad experience with a salesperson in the past that did not build relationship, did not find out what the problem is, did not listen. So because of that, they are more comfortable just doing a transactional sale instead of a relational one. It takes more to be relational, but the results are that you've got enthusiastic, loyal, lifetime customers that won't go to 72 Sold or Carvana to buy their products. They're only going to go to you. You are their person. Now, there's 4 questions that really have to be asked. They're so simple, like head, heart, hands, and feet is simple. So is this. We have to ask ourselves the question, what do we, not ourselves, excuse me, our customer, what do you want? We're not there to just build rapport and be their buddy, although that might be a result. We're there to serve a need. What do you want? It has to be a question that has to be asked. And right behind that, why do you want what you want? Now think about this. In, let's say, real estate, a client says they want a 4-bedroom colonial. So the real estate agent might say, great, I've got one down the street. I know all about it. Let's go look. Now, the problem with that is we don't know why they want a 4-bedroom colonial. If I ask somebody what they want, I also have to tie in, why do you want it? They might say they want life insurance. Why do you want life insurance? And in that why question, we find out more about them. Let me just use a simplistic example of an automobile sale. Client comes in and says they want a new Tundra and they want a long bed. Somewhere along the line, the salesperson has to ask that question. What is it about a Tundra that interests you? Well, I like the heavy dutiness of it, and I love the fact they're reliable. Perfect. Now, let me ask you a question as well. When you say you need a long bed, why do you need a long bed? Because I'm going to put a dirt bike in the back, and the short bed doesn't hold the dirt bike. So now I've got a why behind what they do. The next part you see here says, who are you? What a perfect opportunity to go a little bit deeper. When you say you ride dirt bikes, tell me a little bit about that. Well, we go to Yuma and we go out in the desert, and my kids and I all have dirt bikes. I have a couple that I'm going to put in the bed and a couple in a trailer. Oh, really? How old are your kids? Now we get to know them a little bit authentically without trying to just build rapport by sameness. Now, let me explain building rapport by sameness. If somebody says they play golf and I say, so do I, that's sameness. It doesn't build rapport. It's sameness. If somebody says, I live on Champagne Way. Oh, really? So do I. That doesn't build rapport. It's just sameness. Do you understand? So just because of the fact that I'm trying to find who they are doesn't mean that's a rapport builder. I'm just trying to find out who they are so that I can serve their needs. So what do you want? Why do you want it? Who are you? And later on, we're going to show them how to get it. So I have a son. His name is Dax. Dax is actually a newly licensed real estate agent in Santa Cruz, California. Dax went to the University of Arizona and right out of college decided he wanted to be work for the Cleveland Browns. He started off in their equipment department and moved up to scouting assistant. When he first applied for the Cleveland Browns, he knew somebody that worked for them, and he asked that person, tell me a little bit about how this interview is going to sound. What questions will they ask me? He got some ideas and then went online and looked at different interview situations and the questions that people ask in interviews. He was massively prepared. Then after he had 50 questions lined up, he answered the questions. He actually wrote out the answers. He then called me up and said, Dad, will you interview me? I asked him the questions, and then I checked to see if he gave the answers that he had written down. We practiced this 3 or 4 times. He then had his interview with the Browns and immediately got the job. Now, I will tell you that he had a great little career there as a scouting assistant for the Browns, but he hated Cleveland. So he moved back to California, and now he decides he's got his own website that teaches people how to be a scout, but he decided he wanted to sell real estate. And guess what he did? He studied his craft. He's going to write down all the questions, just like you're going to see here, that he needs to ask when he's sitting with a client, because he realized how important asking questions is. Remember, you can get anything you want if you help enough people get what they want. Selling is influence. What questions should you be asking to develop a connection with your potential clients? Great idea to write those down on a little notebook and get really clear with those. Do it over and over again. Champions do things others won't do. Another question you might ask is, what are specific questions that could be asked to determine whether a buyer has a want, a need, or a desire? Now, that's a good question. Us in sales know what wants and needs and desires are. At least we think we do. A want is they lack something. So they want that thing that they don't have. They might want a sunroof. They may want the 4th bedroom. They may want a pool. A need is essential. It's required. They require a gym to work out in. A desire is a strong feeling of wanting. Now, again, we can look at Webster's on how they define these 3 things. I think you have an idea of what a want and a need and a desire is, but there's a great way to find out whether it's a want, a need, or a desire with your client. And that's ask them. Bob, you said you wanted that 5th bedroom. Is that a deal breaker? Yes, it is. Susan, you mentioned you wanted a gym in your house. Is that a must-have? Yes, it is. So knowing that, guess what? You're going to want to make sure you fulfill that. Now, something you might add on to that, which goes into this qualifying stage, would you consider a house with a garage that was big enough to put a gym in? The key words there, folks, are would you consider. It opens up your information that you're gathering from your client. Selling is influence. Here's something else you can ask yourself. What are some things that you're currently doing during the sales process that may be sending the wrong signal to potential buyers? Maybe you're not paying attention to what they're saying and you're not listening. Maybe you're a high I personality where you like to talk, like me, and you're not listening and you're interrupting at times. Asking that question will reveal a lot to you. I said this earlier and I want to say it now. It's not on the screen, but after every transaction, I ask myself these questions. What did I do right? What did I learn? And what must I change? When you ask those questions, you'll get some revelation, I tell you. Here's another question you can ask. What are some things that you could do during the sales process that show your customers that you can help them, that you do care about them, and that they can trust you? So we've talked about the DISC behavior assessment. Frankly, if I were you, I'd invest in this. I'd get on this immediately. If you're in sales, you want this information about yourself. If you're brand new to sales, you want to know this, but you also want to know it about your clients. And if you've been doing sales for a while, it's that little thing that might move you to that next level. It was for me. I doubled my performance when I learned about this. Now, we have with Maxwell a DISC behavior assessment. We actually have a number of them. We have a leadership assessment. We have a sales assessment. We have a student assessment. We have a career assessment. All of those assessments, I sell them on their own for $100. I also offer clients who buy the assessment for a coaching session. And that coaching session is usually about $150 for about 45 minutes to go over their day. Now, I tell you that for a reason, because I've got a gift for you. I'm going to explain it to you in a minute. There's 4 different parts of the personality. Remember earlier, I talked about that window of arena, blind spots, and mask, and revealed once you do this DISC, because in the DISC behavior assessment, you'll see the areas where your arena is. You'll see the areas where your arena is. You'll see the areas where your arena is, and your blind spots, and your masks, and it'll increase your potential. Now, a dominant is a 7% of the total people tested. A dominant is somebody who is to the point. They're results driven. They don't listen very well, and they get right to the point. But I will tell you, our country was built on dominant driver personalities. You've probably, as we're saying this, I'm sure you're thinking of someone. They're extroverts and they're task-oriented. An influencer, is also an extrovert, and they're very relational. They love to have fun. They love to talk. They're not very good listeners. I got to tell you, I'm an I. In the old days when I hired people, I would hire people around me that were all I's. We all had a lot of fun, but we had paper everywhere and we never finished anything. S's, and I've got a little bit of that in me too. So what's good about that is this supplements my I. S's are great listeners. They're team players. They're introverts, but they love people. Pastors, maybe a social worker might be an example of an S. But there's 67% of the people tested. So a large number of people are S's. And then lastly, compliance. They're introverts. They're task-oriented. They need facts. Where a dominant driver is ready, fire, aim. Let's get it going. A compliant is ready, fire, aim, and then fire. And a C drives a D crazy. So if you are great at this, you can figure people out immediately. Hey, I fly all the time, and I usually sit in the aisle. Don't judge me, but I tend to take people's inventory. Remember that movie with Steve Carell and Tina Fey, where they were in a restaurant and they would look around the restaurant and ask, what's their story? Well, that's what I do with people when they walk down the aisle. And I used to say, what's their story? To myself. Oh, he's a janitor, or he's an engineer, or he's a doctor, or she's a teacher, or she's a psychologist. I would do their inventory without even knowing. Now I do that, but because I'm an expert on DISC, I do it with this. Oh, she's an I, he's an S, absolutely a C. Oh, there's a D. And I take their inventory. And it's great if you're a salesperson because you can figure out who your customers are. Now, what's also fascinating, which we talk about in the workshop to a whole different level, is how people communicate with themselves. Some people are visual. And you've heard this before. They usually talk faster, walk faster because they have pictures going on in their head. And what they see is how they communicate. I'm visual. If I see something, I usually don't forget it. Others are auditory, and they're not quite as high energy as a visual, but what they hear, they never forget. And then there's kinesthetics. They're a little bit more deliberate, and they're a little bit slower in how they communicate. Not they're bright, they're brilliant, but they have to process information, and they are feely, touchy feely. In other words, it feels good. So if I've got a visual or an auditory or kinesthetic, I've got to make sure I pay attention to that as well as the disc, because if I'm going to connect with them, I need to know both of those. That's why it's so important to know this on a deep, deep level. See, John says it best, the secret to success is found in your daily agenda. The secret to success, and you know this, if you're an athlete, you don't work out once a month, you work out every day. The secret to success in sales is you study your craft every day. And you don't just study it 20 years ago, you study it every day, even now, because it's all evolving and changing. You get that. And what we know is that there's so much information out there. I was talking to my buddy Paul, who was the former president of the John Maxwell team. And I said, Paul, what's your vision for the next 5 years? And he said, I don't have a vision for 5 years. He said, I have a vision for 2 years because the world's changing so fast. I can't even imagine what 5 years looks like. And I thought that was fascinating. And what that means for me is I then chunked my vision down to 2 years, but I said 2 years from now, this is where I want to be. And then like you, I broke it down to what I need to do on a daily basis to get from here to there. Talent's not enough. Experience isn't enough. To lead others, you just have to be able to communicate and connect at a whole different level. I do mastermind groups. I do a number of them actually, and I start them every couple of weeks. I'm trying to get to the point where I do 10 new ones a month. And in those groups, we have 10 to 12 people in the group, and they're transformational tables. I'm not teaching. John teaches for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then my job is to go around the room and ask creative questions to get people to open up so they take that information and they grow to the next level. One of the most powerful mastermind groups I have is the 15 Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. And what John talks about is everybody wants to grow, but few people have a plan. And what's so cool about that mastermind group is it brings people together to put a plan together. But the one I love the most, I've got to tell you, is the mastermind group. Everyone communicates, few connect. I mean, think about our world. We look through red, blue glasses, black, white glasses, green, yellow glasses. We all get it. And the reality is you get, and I get that if I'm really going to connect with somebody, I need to know what their beliefs are. I need to know who they are. I need to care about them and try to get to know them at a whole different level. But you know what? It starts with me. Because if I don't know how to communicate with myself, if I don't know how to be self-aware, if I don't know how to be integrous with my behavior, if I don't have a vision of my own self, if I don't have a purpose and a clarity, then how am I going to meet Terry and say that I care enough about you to find out who you are, to find out what your obstacles are, to find out what your blind spots are, to find out what your vision is, and to find out what your why is. Let me tell you something. If you know that about an individual, and you can find it out within an hour, if you know that about an individual, then now you'd go to a whole nother level, and they look at you as a 10, where they know you care, and they know you trust, and they know you want to help them. Last thing, I want to get you going here, but I want to share something that I think is so powerful. You've heard this before, but to build rapport, how do we build rapport? With words, tone, and body language. We've all heard that. That's actually from a science called neuro-linguistic programming. And part of that, words are about 10% of building rapport. But tonality, which we're going to talk about for just a moment, is the most important tool I think that we've got in sales. But it's one least used. It's almost 50% of building rapport. And there's two tones that are essential for the sales experience. Number one tone is sincerity, real, authentic sincerity. It's got to happen. They've got to be able to see that sincerity in you. And it starts with your tone. Can you see the difference? And the next one is certainty. Sooner or later, they have to know you're an expert, an authority, and sharp as a tack. So sincerity, I care, I want to help. I'm going to allow you to, I'm going to show you how you can trust me. And sincerity, certainty, sharp as a tack, expert and authority. Those two things together are game changers. So please, if you want to do a boot camp, let me know. We have 12-week boot camp. We've got a one-day workshop on sales. I would love to serve you. Email me at bart@bartnollenberger.com. Also, the gift for you for hanging out with me is this. Anybody watching this, I'm going to give you on me a DISC behavior assessment. I'm going to send it to you. You email me and said, Bart, I was in your meeting. I'm going to send you that DISC behavior assessment. And then I'm also going to spend 40 minutes with you, complimentary, going over it so you understand it at a whole different level. Thank you, Terry. I can't thank you enough, sister, for allowing me to spend some time with your team and with the chamber. I am honored, and it's been so much fun.
Oh my gosh, I've got tons of questions. I've taken about 3 pages of notes myself. Okay, I want you to go back. So there were a couple of things that questions here. Building rapport, words, tonality. There were 3 different components.
Body language, correct.
Body language. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's in this science NLP designed by 2 professors at the University of Santa Cruz years ago. Tony Robbins has taught on NLP. You've heard it. You've heard it many times. I'm sure you use it. But in the science, the body language we talk a lot about, mirroring their body language. And we've got 4 seconds. So we've got to, according to scientists, we've got 4 seconds to build rapport. So that body language, paying attention and honoring them by mirroring their body language is a key piece. But I think tone is the piece that we've missed out on a lot. And that, to me, I know that's been a game changer.
Well, and it's interesting that you brought this up. And the reason why one of the reasons why I wrote that down is during this whole COVID, we have how we communicate has all changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter whether you're in person with them or via Zoom or using technology, you still have to apply these principles.
Yeah.
And you have to adjust.
Yes, we do. I mean, think about that. In a Zoom call, I do Zoom calls every day with sales teams. And I have music playing in the background. I'm jumping around because without doing that, they're sitting there like this. And I've got to get them moving. I've got to transfer my certainty to them. I've got to transfer my energy to them. And my gosh, isn't that important? Obviously in this, but it's also important in that sales environment, even if it's in person, of course. Yeah.
Well, and I love you brought up, it is about the relationships that you build. So I want to ask you a personal question because you talked about the DISC when you were in your early 20s.
Yes.
And now how you've taken it and how that's also been changed because you change, you grow as an individual.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you said was, and I think this is so critical, a lot of times people forget to listen. They're sitting there nodding their heads, but are they really engaged? How did you overcome that to be so successful as you are now?
Well, I was a terrible listener. That's how I did. It was the pain. You don't grow from pain. I mean,
That's true.
I'm in the process of writing a book, and I was with the author this morning, and those pains, if we allow ourselves to get uncomfortable and really look at the pain, that's where the growth happens. Well, I had to learn to, I had agenda anxiety. And what that meant was my agenda is way more important than yours. So that I'm going to keep talking, and if you start to talk, I'm going to just wait until you stop so I can say what I need to say. And when I realized that, I think it was probably from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. When I realized and read that book and it said, listen to understand. And you just let that soak in. It's a verb. Listen, pay attention, be all in, eye contact, listen to understand, then to be understood. There's a gap there between the understand and then. And that was the difference with me. So my new disc has a lot more S in it than the old disc once upon a time.
Yeah.
I had no S on the map then.
Yeah. And it's interesting. One of my quotes that I love is great things never come from comfort zones.
Amen. I love that.
And you got to keep pushing yourself each day to be better. Um, the other thing I thought was really interesting, and because I just went through this, especially with our chamber, and we're updating our strategic plan, is some of the board, they really wanted that 5-year plan, and I kept saying 2 years, 2 years.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
it was nice to hear what you had to say. I gave them what they wanted, but the 2 years is where I got the meat done.
Right. Well, Paul's a high school dropout that ended up building 5 multi-million-dollar companies. And when Paul talks, I listen. And so I always ask Paul questions because I want to know how he's doing it. And when he told me that, I thought, actually, it's a relief. And I can see 2 a lot better than I can see 5, right? Especially as I get older. So 2's good, and it's not overwhelming to me. And you and I both know 2 years goes like very fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was big for me. Absolutely.
Well, and it's okay to change that course and make those adjustments as
Yes.
you go through,
Yes.
because nobody would have ever, even if they had a crystal ball, nobody predicted what we've all just been through.
Right.
So,
Right.
I want you to talk a little bit. One of the other questions is about servant leadership. That is so powerful. And I am a big one on servant leadership with all of my team.
Yeah.
I just think it shows when we give, we do get, but we get far more in return.
Yeah. And I'm going to flip that back to you. How do you show servant leadership with your team? It's a big part of your core belief. You've had massive success. How do you show servant leadership?
So one of the things, and because the chamber does lots of events, but I would never ask my team to do anything I wouldn't do. And I am not a big one on titles. I don't. And I always tell my team, if that's something that motivates you, that's okay. I just need to know that. And I tell them that up front, because if the front door or the lobby needs to be swept and everybody else is busy, then I'm going to grab a broom and sweep it, and in doing those kinds of things. I also want to empower them. I want them to empower them to find their passion and do things that they love, because I really think finding that balance is important. And that's 2 of my things that I really, really focus on.
I had this opportunity. Somebody looked at my website and lived in Mesa and had a restaurant, and I told you about that. And they hit me up, and I sat down with him and talked. He's a former lieutenant colonel in the Army in Baghdad, and his wife was a former captain in the Air Force. These people are powerful people, and to have them bring me into their family. This was at a Chick-fil-A store, and invite me in to do Leadership Academy for them was the most humbling thing ever. But I love this guy because he said, I have a great pension. He said, my whole thing is I want to teach leaders how to be leaders so they can have their own stores. And whether they're the fry cook, if they have one there, or they're mopping the floors. I want to help them. So even if they don't become store owners, that when they're 20 years down the road, they can look back and say, not that Lieutenant Colonel did this for me, but I remember that experience when I was in my 20s and the servitude of that person and how they believed in me. And that's how I got where I am right now. Excuse me. So this guy, I mean, he's the real deal. He is the real deal, like you are, of being a servant leader. And he's not doing it. I think Wayne Dyer said it once, don't be attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
It's like when I went and made a sales presentation to this guy a couple of days ago, I was so prepared, like Dax. And I knew nothing could knock me off my game, but I wasn't attached to whether he said yes or no. He said yes, but it's because I came from the place of, I want to give you the information and let you make the decision. I asked him to buy, but I was so prepared, it just flowed. And years ago, I had a sales manager that said, you don't have to ask them to close if you do everything else right. You have to be available to ask them to close, but you don't always have to ask to close. But there's a great book called The 5 Levels of Leadership by John. Remember? Yeah. And in it, number 1 is position. I'm the boss. This is the way it is, right? Level 1. Level 2, permission. I'm a nice person. Follow me, right? Number 3, productivity. I make all the profit. Follow me. Now, I will tell you, there are some businesses that stop right there. They're transactional and the statement determines their leadership. But number 4 is this guy and you, and that is people development, developing people. And then number 5, as you know, is leaders developing leaders. Whew, that's the epitome, isn't it?
I know. In fact, it's funny. With my team, I always ask them in their review, okay, so yes, we go over the goals and everything that everybody does, but what do they want to do personally? In fact, it was funny. We were just getting to that mid-year. We're almost to that mid-year. And I made, let them all know, hey, we're going to get together. And one of them, I said, hey, where are you at on, you wanted to make this as your goal? She says, I know, I've been so busy. I said, I just want you to think about it. We're not meeting for a couple of weeks. If that's really your goal, how can I help you get there?
Amen.
And it kind of set her back. So I was preparing her. So I'm hoping that in a few weeks she comes back to me and says, I did it.
Yeah. Amen.
That next step. So.
And we get this, we see this all the time, that people have a goal. This is what I want, but they don't do it. And Urban Meyer says, hey, former Ohio State football coach, he says, look, if you've got something you want and you consistently aren't doing it, come on, look yourself in the mirror and say, I don't really want to do it. Because if you've got it as a goal, but you're not doing anything about it, sooner or later, you got to go back with that self-integrity and say, I guess I don't want it because I'm not doing what it takes to get it. That's a tough conversation with self.
It is. It is. Wow. So much good stuff. I could talk hours and hours with you. Bart, I know that we've just scratched surface and our viewers are going to want to know more. I just want to thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights, and would love for you to come back. I think you've got just a wealth of knowledge, and the more we can keep educating people about this, the better that we're going to be as a community. So thank you.
So true. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you so much. And
thank you.
Let me know if you want those discs. They're free. Let's go ahead and do those for y'all. And Terry, if you want one, or your team, same thing. Just hit me the email. I'll send them off to you. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks again so
right.
much.
All right.
Well,
y'all.
next week, join us. It's TikTok on the clock. Join the platform while it's hot with Christian Weniger with Never Not Social.